With 3 rounds to go, who should be the favourites to win the Premiership this year? I asked because I was a bit surprised at who are still the favourites. I'm going to get into that in the video and talk through the various different teams that are in pole position at the moment. But welcome back. Apologies for the slight delay. It's been a while since I uploaded on the channel. A combination of just busy week, and then I'm on the back end now of recovering from a bit of an illness. So anyway, we are back. And I thought I would delve straight into the Premiership. So let me know, who do you think should be considered the favourites for the Premiership this year? Put it in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. But the reason I thought this would be a good video to do, I was doing commentary on Sale's game against Harlequins at the weekend. And beforehand, we had an odds section, and Saracens were still the bookmakers' favourites to win the Premiership this year outright, which I thought was really interesting because we're at a part of the season now where everyone's played 15 games, plus we've had the Champions Cup, and I would say it's pretty clear that the best team, the team that has been the most consistent, is Northampton. And if we were at an earlier point of the year, let's say they'd played under 10 games in the Premiership and Northampton were top and they might have been going all right in the Champions Cup, but Saracens were still the favourites, I would understand that because it was early on in the season. But I think we're near the business end here. There's 3 matches to play for every team. And I was quite surprised that it was Sarries, but I'll be interested to know if you all share my surprise at that as well. Now, what I would say, and to put the case forward for Saracens, and I think the reason that they are the bookmakers' favourites is because they've been there and done it. Because they have probably over a decade now of experience of getting to the business end of the Premiership and winning it, of having the experience in that team, of being able to put together a run of fixtures that sees them ending up winning silverware. And I actually think it's such a reflection of how good Saracens have been that they are still the favourites this year as well. What are they at the moment? Third in the table? Third in the table. We've seen some great results. I mean, when we came back after the Six Nations and they absolutely dispatched Harlequins in the way that they did, I think a lot of people were thinking, here we go, Saracens are coming. This is where they're going to then rip through it and work their way to a title. But they then lost to Northampton. They got beaten heavily in Bordeaux. Okay, they had a good win against Gloucester at the weekend just gone. But for me, it still feels like I know how good Saracens can be. I know the experience they have in that team, both in terms of personnel and in terms of coaching. But I was still surprised that the bookmakers had them as the favourites. And look, if there is one team that is able to do it, if there is one team that is able to harness the kind of narrative of the last chance saloon with Owen Farrell leaving, with the Vunipola brothers leaving, with quite a few players departing that squad to build a narrative around that and a siege mentality that sees them through to win the Premiership, it is Saracens. So I understand it from that point of view. But for me, on the body of evidence, I feel like it should be Northampton. Northampton at the moment are top of the Premiership, and if you look at their win-loss record, they have comfortably been the most consistent team in the league this season. And then you marry that up with how they've performed in the Champions Cup, and I think they've been absolutely sensational. And actually, I had a great double bill of Premiership rugby on the weekend because I was at Northampton-Leicester Saturday before going up to Sale on the Sunday. And Northampton are just really good. They made 7 changes for that East Midlands derby against Leicester. And in the first half, they weren't amazing. In the second half, they absolutely blew them away. 5 tries, bonus point win, Finn Smith coming off the bench, making covering tackles and kicking drop goals. And this is a Northampton team that it has been said plenty of times this season, but with Lee Radford coming in, they are a harder nut to crack than they have been previously. Northampton for a long time have been able to score tries. For a long time, they had the best attack in the Premiership, but defensively, they weren't good enough. In the forward pack, they weren't good enough. And you felt when it came down to it, the business end of a competition, they would lose to, for example, a Saracens or a side like that were just able to win the arm wrestle against them. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I feel like with this Northampton team, it does feel different. I'm not saying that they are definitely going to go on and win the Premiership, but I think at this moment in time, they should be favourites, because they have a more all-round game. I think they have better strength in depth, and I think they have a system that they can make 7 changes to, and you still have players coming in and not too much changes. There are a lot of really good signs there for Northampton. So for me, that's why they would be the favourites. You can let me know between Northampton and Saracens, or let me know any other teams. Who else would you throw in there? Bath are second in the table at the moment. The big question for Bath really is how they operate without Finn Russell and how long he's out for. We don't know at the moment. Not Cam Redpath, Orlando Bailey, I think did a superb, did a superb job coming in against Exeter. And he's a really good fly half who has had less game time this year because of Finn Russell. So Bath, you've got to say, could well be there. Bristol are a team that have snuck up into fourth and they've won 5 of their last 6 in the Premiership. They have now scored more points than anyone else in the Premiership. And you just feel like that their game is in a place at the moment that they're getting close to being back to their best. Bristol, when they kind of won the Challenge Cup, when they got playoff semi-finals 2 years in a row, and in the second of those years topped the Premiership. I know they then went on to lose in that Bristol game against Quins. But when they were that team that were very, very good, yes, they had the running attacking rugby, but they had the set piece to go with it as well. And I think those two things are starting to marry up once more for the Bears. And as a Bristol fan, I'm really excited to see where they're able to get to. They've got some pretty tough fixtures coming up still anyway. But we'll see if they're able to get top 4. But the reason I mention them is because if the playoffs started today, I don't think anyone would want to play Bristol. Yes, there'll be teams like Northampton who would back themselves to beat them, but I still think the Bears at the moment are a tough matchup because of their form, because of how they're playing, and because of the areas of the game that they seem to be getting right. There are a number of other teams we could obviously mention. Sale with that big win against Quins, which keeps them in contention for the top 4. Alex Sanderson has spoken about it, but they are starting to be healthy again. They've had a lot of injuries this year. When you have Tuolangi back and George Ford back and a number of other players in that team, are they then able to put themselves in a position to get the playoffs and get the top 4? And would they then be able to put themselves in position to get back to a Premiership final like they were last year? I have questions over Sale more because, well, they've been inconsistent this year. They have fluctuated between some good results and some really, really poor results and some quite heavy defeats. But more than that, my gut instinct is I feel like the depth in their squad isn't quite where it was a year ago when they did get to a Premiership final. The likes of Aka van der Merwe no longer being there. Players of that kind of calibre that I think means there's a bit of depth has been lost to that squad, which is why I maybe question Sale. I would love it if they got back there, by the way. There's something that I find I really like about this Sale team in terms of Alex Sanderson, in terms of the identity of the team, their connection with that part of the North. I would love to see them be successful and win the Premiership. I'm just not sure it's going to happen. Who else we got? Leicester and Exeter, I think, are in last chance saloon, and I don't think are going to be up there in contention for it this year. And there's one other team that I'm completely forgetting off the top of my head. Harlequins, of course. Harlequins are an interesting one. That Harlequins win against Bordeaux in the Champions Cup is the kind of performance that if this team can pull out a couple of more times, if they can get themselves in the top 4, they are the sort of side that could produce that performance a couple of times to win themselves a title. A bit like they did a couple of years ago when they beat Bristol in that semi-final, when they played an incredible game in the final, and out of nowhere they won a Premiership title. I think Harlequins are capable of that. They are also capable of, within the same 80 minutes, of going from one extreme to the other. I was there at the Stoop a couple of weeks ago when they were 40 points to 3 up against Bath early in the second half and only won it by 4 points, 40 points to, or was it 3 points? 40 points to 37 or 36, whatever the final score was. So Harlequins are impossible to predict, but they're the sort of side you know have the capability to do it. How good they were up front against Bordeaux, how good they can be in attack in terms of scoring tries. The question is consistency. So those are my thoughts. I think Northampton should be favourites rather than Saracens, whilst I can understand why many people would say Sarries. I think you could make a case for other teams being able to win it this year as well, which makes the run-in so exciting. So let me know, who do you think is going to get top 4, but more importantly, who should be favourites? Who should be favourites to win the Premiership right now? Let me know in the comments. Look forward to reading them. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Apologies for the slight delay in posting. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.